Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about solving two-step inequalities. So you should have out your notes page that you received right before we left. If you don't have this, you could print a copy out from the post. There should be a blank copy, or you could just write everything on a piece of paper. Whichever you prefer is fine. It looks like this, in case you're looking for it. That's the copy that you should have, possibly. And like we've said before, solving inequalities is almost exactly the same as solving equations. The only difference is instead of an equal sign, you have an instead of an equal sign, you have an inequality symbol, and the one little thing with dividing and multiplying by a negative, which you learned in your last section. Okay, so that's the only thing that you really need to remember. Keeping your inequality symbol, flipping it if you divide or multiply by a negative. That's the only difference. So let's take a look at number one. We have 6x minus 8 is less than or equal to 10. So our first step is we're going to get, this is just like a two-step equation, except for the first step, we're going to get rid of the minus 8, the subtract 8. So to do that, we are going to use the inverse of subtract 8. I'm going to rewrite this just a little bit bigger so I have some more space. And so to get rid of that subtract 8, we are going to add 8. Whatever we do to one side of the inequality, we have to do to the other. My 8's cancel out. Negative 8 plus 8, we are left with 6x. Is less than or equal to 10 plus 8 is 18. Now I need to get my x all by itself, so I'm going to get rid of that 6. In order to get rid of that 6, I'm going to divide by 6 on both sides. I'm dividing by a positive, so I don't have to worry about anything here. My 6's cancel out, and I'm left with x is less than or equal to 18 divided by 6 is 3. Okay, we're going to graph that. We have 3. We have 4, 5, 6, it's 2, 1, 0, and that's less than or equal to, so that includes 3. Close circle, and everything to the left would be less than or equal to. Okay, make sure you bring that all the way past your arrow here, so you're showing that it'll continue in this direction. Okay, and question number 2. We have x over negative 4 plus 7 is less than negative 11. If you notice, I have that little star next to that one. And as you can remember in the last video when I had that, that meant you were going to probably flip your symbol, right? Okay, so my first step, I need to get rid of the 7. So I'm going to subtract 7 on both sides. My add 7 minus 7, that cancels out. I'm left with x over negative 4 is less than negative 7 minus 11 is a negative 18. Okay, now I need to get x all by itself, so I have to get rid of that negative 4. So to get rid of the negative 4, I need to multiply by a negative 4 on both sides. And when I multiply by a negative, I need to flip my symbol. So I'm going to change that less than to a greater than symbol so I don't forget. My negative 4's cancel out, and I am left with x is, have my greater than symbol, negative 18 times negative 4, that would give me a positive 72. There's your answer there. On my number line, I have 72, 73, 74, 75, this would be 71, 70, and 69. We have a open circle there. It's greater than on 72, and it's greater than, so it's all of the numbers that are greater than 72 is to the right. Okay, next question, number 3, we have negative 3x plus 4 is greater than or equal to 16. First step, I'm going to get rid of the 4, so I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides. Positive 4 and negative 4, that cancels out. I'm left with negative 3x is greater than or equal to 16 minus 4 is 12. Now I got to get rid of that negative 3, and this is multiplication, so the inverse would be division. So I'm going to divide by a negative 3 on both sides. And what happens when I divide by a negative? I need to flip my symbol. So my greater than or equal to becomes less than or equal to. My negative 3's cancel out, and I am left with x is less than or equal to negative 4. So here's negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, that's a negative 5, negative 6, and negative 7. Less than or equal to gives me a closed circle, and it's going to be less than, so the numbers that are less than negative 4 would be all these to the left here. Make sure you continue that all the way to the end of your number line. Question number 4. We have negative 1/3 times the quantity of x plus 6 is greater than negative 4. Okay, if you remember these when we were doing equations, the first step was that you had to distribute your negative 1/3. Okay, so I'm going to multiply negative 1/3 times x, which gives me negative 1/3 x, and negative 1/3 times a positive 6 gives me a negative. And if you wanted to do the math on this over here, or if you could do it in your head, just want to be careful, but that would give you a negative 2. Okay, and then we're going to bring down our greater than symbol and negative 4, I'm sorry. So we have negative 1/3 x minus 2 is greater than negative 4 once you get that distributing out of the way. Okay, now I'm going to get rid of first my negative 2, so I'm going to add 2. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Negative 2 plus 2 cancels out, and on the left side, I am left with a negative 1/3 x is greater than negative 4 plus 2 is a negative 2. Okay, now I need to get rid of that negative 1/3, so the inverse would be division, but we don't divide fractions, we multiply by the reciprocal, so we're going to multiply by a negative 3/1 on both sides. Okay, on the left side, everything cancels out except for my x. Oops, and what happened? I multiplied by a negative, so I need to flip my symbol. Okay, so it's now less than symbol. Okay, my 1/3, my 1/3, my 3/1, that all cancels out, and I am left with x is less than, and on the right side I have 2 negatives, so that would be positive, and 2 times 3 is 6. X is less than 6. 6, 7, 8, 9, 5, 4, 3. It's less than 6, so that's an open circle, and everything that is less than 6 is this way. And there's your answer there. Okay, number 5, similar type question. We have 7 times the quantity of x plus 2 is less than or equal to negative 77. So our first step is to distribute that 7. 7 times x is 7. 7 times 2 is a positive 14. We have less than or equal to negative 77. Okay, solve that just like an equation. First, we're going to get rid of that positive 14 with a negative 14 on both sides. This 14's cancel out. I'm left with 7x is less than or equal to negative 77 minus 14. You have same signs, so you're going to add. That's going to be a negative, and that's going to give me 91. Okay, now you want to get rid of the 7. So I'm going to divide by 7 on both sides. Okay, 7x divided by 7. My 7's cancel out. And I'm dividing by a positive 7. So I don't need to worry about flipping my sign, even though I'm dividing by a positive. Just because the 91 is negative doesn't mean I need to flip. I only flip when I divide or multiply by a negative. 7's positive, so we're good. My answer is going to be negative because I have one negative, and 91 divided by 7 is 13. Might have to do some math on that, but I did it for you. Okay, so we have negative 13, negative 12, negative 11, negative 10. And then this way we have negative 14, negative 13. I'm sorry, that should be a 15, and negative 16. And that's going to be a closed circle because it's less than or equal to, and everything to the left. These numbers are less than 13, negative 13. Okay, last question on that. We have number 6, which is 1 2/10 times the quantity of x plus 3 5/10 is greater than or equal to 4 8/10. First thing I'm going to do is I have to distribute that 1 2/10. So 1 2/10 times x is 1 2/10 x. 1 2/10 times 3 5/10. You're going to multiply that. That's going to give you a positive. And I guess I should do that math on the side just to be sure. I'm trying to do it in my head, but I don't want to chance that. 5 times 2 is 10. 5. That'll be 6. 3 times 2 is 6. That's a 4. And we have 5.2. Is that correct? Make sure I did that right. Sorry, I carried that. I did this wrong right here because this would be 3 times 1, which is 3. So it's 44. I'm sorry, move your decimal 2 places, so it's 4.2. I knew that didn't look right. 4 2/10 is greater than or equal to 4 8/10. Okay, now we are going to solve that inequality. To do that, I'm going to get rid of that 4 2/10 by subtracting by 4 2/10 on both sides. Okay, and this cancels out. I am left with 1 2/10 x is greater than or equal to 4 8/10 minus 4 2/10 gives me 6/10 positive. Okay, I'm going to divide to get rid of that 1 2/10 by 1 2/10 on both sides. Okay, and the 1 2/10 on this side cancels out. I'm left with x is, I didn't divide by a negative, so my symbol stays. And we could just move this decimal out, make it 6/12, which would be 1/2. It's the easiest way to simplify that, right? Okay, so that's going to be 1/2. I'll make this 1. I'll make that 3/2, and that would be 2. And this would be 0, and this would be negative 1/2, and this would be negative 1. And that's greater than or equal to, so that is a closed circle, and it's everything to the right. Okay, and this last question we are going to take a look at. It should be on the back of the page. We have a scuba diver is at an elevation of negative 38 feet. The diver starts moving at a rate of negative 12 feet per minute. Write and solve an inequality that represents how long it will take the diver to reach an elevation deeper than negative 200 feet. Okay, so we want to start with what we know, okay? There's a couple different ways you could write the one part of the inequality. You want to try to do it with your double signs though, so you might want to add in the middle, but you have 2 negatives, so maybe just leave it at the negative, okay? So we are at negative 38 feet, okay? Now, some of you might think to do a plus sign here and then the 12 feet per hour. So that would be a negative 12 feet per hour, okay? Negative 12h. You're going to multiply those two. And then we need to get to the negative 200. Now, I personally wouldn't want this double sign, okay? So let's pick one. What has to be there? We're going to use a subtraction sign. So, if only I knew where the eraser was. Nope, that's not it. Let me do this. Okay, we're going to make that a negative 12. Sorry. Negative 12h is less, oh, I didn't get that far with you. And then we have the negative 200. Okay, now, which symbol should I put in here? Okay, we need to write and solve an inequality that represents how long it will take the diver to reach an elevation deeper than negative 200, okay? So we want this number here to be less than 200 feet. Okay, that's the symbol that's going to be there. And these are tricky. I've talked to you already about these word problems. That is your correct inequality. Okay, so now we're going to solve that. First thing I'm going to do, and you could flip-flop these two. If you had the negative 12h minus 38, that's also okay. Okay, so let's get rid of our negative 38 first by adding 38 to both sides. Okay, and my 38s will cancel out here. I'm left with a negative 12h is less than negative 200 plus 38. You have different signs, so you need to subtract, and you get a negative 162. That might take you a minute to do the math, but do that for you, get that moving. Now we're going to get rid of our negative 12. So to do that, I'm going to divide by negative 12. Oh, what happens when I divide by a negative? I need to flip my symbol. So instead of less than, that's now greater than. My negative 12 cancels out on both on the left. I'm left with h is greater than. We have negative 162 divided by a negative 12 gives me a positive. That would be 113 5/10. And how long is that? That's hours. You should label that. Okay? So that one is a tricky word problem with the two steps. We're going to be practicing quite a few of them in the future. Okay, if you have any questions, write them down. Hopefully this kind of makes sense. It's not too difficult. The word problem might be tricky. Okay, have a great day, and we will talk to you later.